Hello, everyone, and welcome to PCR's December Tips and Virtual Transition Times meeting. My name is Melissa Wyman, and I am PCR's Respite Care and Community Engagement Director. I will be your moderator this evening, so please feel free to send any questions or comments in the chat box below. We are so excited to be collaborating with Montgomery County Public Schools MCPS Transition Service Unit to provide an enhanced transition times program for transitioning youth, their family, and caregivers. We are delighted to offer this presentation with American Sign Language simultaneous interpretation. We will also be offering this presentation with Spanish simultaneous interpretation. The English and Spanish language versions will be archived on the PCR website Transition Times page. To maximize the virtual experience this evening, here are some housekeeping reminders. Please make sure to turn off your camera, mute microphones, select speaker view, making sure that your questions are general, putting questions in the chat, and questions will be answered at a specific time that we will announce. Closed captioning is also available. So click show captions to see the captions for the webinar. You must select the speaking language you would like to show. This evening is college night. We will start off with a presentation from Disability Support Services at Montgomery College. And then we will have breakout rooms when you will get a chance to go to 3 different breakout rooms. You'll get to go to Shady Grove at Montgomery College, the Workforce Development, and TERP Succeed program. All right, so let's get started.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see me. My name is Katie Haig, and I am a disability support counselor at Montgomery College. My colleague Leanne is going to present with me tonight, and I have another colleague out there in Zoom land who's going to be answering at least a few questions in the chat as she's able to manage. We are hoping not to take too many kind of one-on-one questions, questions about you as an individual student, since you will be required to meet with a counselor at some point anyway. We're so excited to be here and to welcome you to our Raptor world at Montgomery College. And I'm going to pass it over to Leanne to begin.
Thank you, Katie. And hello, everyone. And thank you again for joining us. Let me just go over a little bit of our agenda. Tonight, what we're going to talk about, we're going to give you a big kind of a broad overview of DSS and what we do at Montgomery College. We'll talk about some services and accommodations. We'll talk a lot about the differences between high school and college, and it is a large difference. I was K through 12 for 30 some odd years. My second year at Montgomery College, and I will tell you, it is a different world, but it's an exciting world too, and I'm excited, to talk more about it. We'll talk a little bit about the MC enrollment steps, and then how to apply to disability support services. We'll talk about the intake process as well, and then at the end, we'll answer some questions for you. The next slide. And there we all are. We're a big group. We cover all of the campuses, and there's a lot of us. We are counselors, of course, assistive technology specialists who work with all sorts of different things, computerized. We are learning specialists, peer tutors, interpreters, of course, administrative aides. We're very holistic, and we work very tightly together in order to support our students at Montgomery College. It's a great group. And we work with a diverse group of students. We have students with learning disabilities too. ADHD, we work with mental health disabilities, anxiety, depression, which we're seeing a lot more of. Autism spectrum disorders as well. Physical and medical disabilities, of course, brain injuries, vision and hearing impairment. And we do also work with students who have a broken arm or a broken leg, just to make sure that their mobility is there and they're able to kind of walk around this, the college area, the campus. The biggest thing, though, I want to express is that you're not alone. There are so many students, over 2,000 students per semester that we work with. So there are all, and there's always people there for you. Okay. The services are individualized and they're, again, college-wide. Some of the things that we do is provide academic and personal counseling. We approve, of course, and arrange accommodations such as extended time, classroom notes, things like that. We also provide alternative text formats. We provide auxiliary aids such as interpreters, of course. We assist students with advocacy and communication skills, which is one of the biggest things that I seem to be working with a lot of our new students, making sure that they understand that they're in charge of this, that, this is their education and they're in the driver's seat. And it's important that they use their own voice and they know how to communicate with their professors, because it can be really intimidating at first. But I think, once you start working with the students, we see that they start growing in their advocacy, and it's really a wonderful thing to see. We do refer students to appropriate colleges and community resources, and we act as a resource for the students, for the professors, for the community members. We're kind of the go-to people that work with our students, just to make sure that they are supported and they have access. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Katie, who's going to talk more about specific services.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. This is just an overview of some of the services that we provide. It is pretty different from the K through 12 system, and so we're going to try to point some of that out. We have some slides coming up on that, but that's the biggest thing that I want students to take away from this, is that we are here to support you, but it's going to look pretty different than the K through 12 system. So what do we do in DSS? We can do some of the kind of entry-level advising, helping you choose classes, getting yourself set up, come up with your education plan. We do provide accommodation letters. I'll point out that your 504 or IEP from MCPS, we will take that and use it as documentation. It will not be implemented at the college level. You will get an accommodation letter instead. We'll talk a tiny bit more about that. We do also provide some tutoring. Up here in the DSS suite. There's a lot of support on campus, but these are the ones that are provided specifically for students who use our services. And then as needed, we can be a liaison with external agencies. We have students working with some different support agencies like Doors or Cornerstone to provide the support that they might need. Next, please. So what are some accommodations? There's some commonly requested accommodations. Now at the college level, accommodations usually occur inside the classroom or inside a testing situation. What you do outside of the classroom is kind of up to you. There's a few exceptions, like perhaps audiobooks. But for the most part, it's going to be happening inside the classroom. So commonly requested accommodations might be extra time on tests, using a note taker or a note-taking app, and then some different kinds of assistive technology. Some other possibilities, and again, we choose these accommodations based on the documented disability and then what's the educational impact of that. So additional possibilities could include, calculator, reduced course load. That's not really an accommodation, but some people set up their schedule that way. Alternatives to group work. And then there are some things that we do not provide at the college level. Long-term counseling, we don't do. Mobility training, personal care, transportation, we don't provide those. We don't have a resource room. We do have a whole study area up in the DSS suite, but it's not set up in the same way that the resource rooms are set up in the high school classrooms. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have the learning suite on each of the 3 campuses. We have a place where we employ some peer tutors. Again, they're students who have mostly been pulled from the English/writing classes and trained in tutoring by some English faculty who work with our office. And they can meet with students regularly to provide some extra support around the topics that they're studying. In that same learning suite, there's some organization and time management skills. You can get that individually. There's a lot of academic skills workshops. So there's a lot of academic support that we provide. We don't demand that students come to this. This is not a requirement. These are some, additional supports that we provide in the hopes of helping students be successful. Next, please. So the transition, some of the differences between high school and college. So I really want to pull out the first two on this. So, when a student has a class, it's generally going to be for one semester, which is about 15 weeks. At the college level, we're going to cover about the same amount of material that in high school you're going to cover over a whole calendar year. So it's going to go a lot faster, the coverage of the material. However, I think you're going to find that you're going to have less face time with the professor, while you, the student, are going to be responsible for a lot more work in that, a lot more work, a lot more reading, a lot more material in that shorter time frame. So the students really need to be kind of keeping up and monitoring what's going on in their classes. They're unlikely to be reminded as much. And the students, even when we have dual enrollment students or high school students that are coming to college, we're going to treat you like an adult. So it's not required that you come to college, but we're really happy to have you here and are going to support you. But there's some differences that come with being an adult. Next slide, please. So what I want to point out on this slide is that in the K through 12 system, as you probably know, you're under the IDEA law, and that's a special education law. At the college level, disability support is under civil rights legislation. So our goal at the college level is to give you access. It's to give you access to the curriculum. It's not a guarantee of success. Now we want you to be successful, and we have a lot of supports to help make you successful, but that's not the goal of accommodations. So this does take a little bit of getting used to for some of our new students. And students are not required to use disability support. If anybody ever comes to me and says they have an IEP, I highly encourage them to use our support, but it's not required. And about this time of year, when we're getting ready to go into the spring semester, we always have quite a few students who come in who didn't use our services in the first semester. And that's okay, it is their choice. But they realize that perhaps it might be, they might be able to show what they know if they have extra time on tests or, some other kinds of accommodations that they've had before. Anyway, so again, we are modeled on access, not success, and that does take a little getting used to for some students. We don't do the case manager model so much. The student needs to advocate for themselves. And I feel like I'm hitting this really hard. You are, as a student, going to meet individually with one of the counselors in our office to go over your disability and the accommodations that you want, and you will be empowered in terms of what happens next. You'll be told exactly what the expectations are, and we're here to help you navigate it, but it is a little bit of a change from what happened before from high school.
Please make sure that you're...
noise.
Yeah, sorry, Katie. Please make sure that your sound is muted, please.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide? So yes, at the when you come to college, you're the parents. So I'm thrilled to have parents participate. I am an MCPS parent. My kids have now graduated from high school, but I had one on an IEP, and I know exactly what what it's like. Your role kind of changes when we get to the college level. It's my previous chair put this together, parent to coach, which I like. The student needs to be in the driver's seat. When I meet with students individually, I do have moms and dads come in because I have so much information to give right at the beginning. And I'm perfectly happy for the student to have another set of listening ears. But I'm really going to concentrate on talking to the student about what they want to get out of Montgomery College and how we're set up to help them succeed. So what we're saying to parents is, glad you're participating, glad you want what's best for your student. It's time for the student to really get in the driver's seat, offer support, allow your student to advocate for themselves, be patient, don't be discouraged. Go ahead, please. So applying to MC, we put a little bit of information in here about that because before you apply to DSS, you do need to apply to Montgomery College, get your M number, which is that number that will identify you while you're a student here. Go ahead and go to the next one. So we put down some enrollment steps here. So you are going to apply to the college. There are multiple placement options. I think we put them on the next page. I'm going to highly recommend that you go to the new student orientation. And then once you're in Montgomery College's system, we're going to ask you to apply to DSS, to Disability Services. We say apply. It's not like we're not going to let people in per se, but it's the start of our process. You're going to fill out some information on yourself. We are going to ask for some documentation of your disability, and then you're going to meet individually with one of the counselors to get to know you a little bit better and come up with your plan and what your accommodations are going to be. Again, your accommodations will be based on what your disability is. Here is a slide on some of the placement options. I don't want to go into this in too much detail, but you may know that there's some alternative placement options worked on by the states, the unweighted GPA. There's some that are alternative placement by subject matter in English and in some math classes. We do accept an SAT score or an ACT score for placement. Sometimes if those are kind of low, we're going to suggest that you do some of our guided placement, which is listed next. There's a guided placement for English. There's a guided placement for math. The math is, you're going to take, it's called ALEX. It's a learning platform. You're going to take the test once, work through some learning modules, and then take the test again. Almost every student's score goes up between test 1 and test 2. Again, if your SAT score is very high, you may not need to do that. If you have alternative placement, you may want to go ahead and do the math placement because it can place you higher. The alternative placement starts you off at the very base level. So it depends on what your major is, but you'll be talking to a counselor about this, so don't be overwhelmed. We do have some placement based on the GED as well. So these vary a lot. So again, you're going to talk to your counselor. Go ahead. Thank you. So how to apply to DSS. We have a link on the website on that little purple bar across the top of our website. We're under counseling and advising. There's a link that says new students, and it's going to walk you through the process. We don't ask for all that much in terms of just getting yourself set up and into our system. Yeah, you're going to be linked to Accommodate, which is a database that we use, and you're going to put in a few things. You do need your M number, though. This is why we want you to be already into the Montgomery College system already. And then once you do your part in terms of applying for DSS, you're going to get a phone call from our DSS staff. So please put a phone number down that you can answer or at least get a voicemail. It's really better for us to do it by phone than by email because we've held appointments for email and students don't get back to us. And we just have too many students to do it that way. So after you do this process, you'll get a phone call from us, from our front desk, to schedule an appointment with an intake. Well, with a counselor for the intake. Generally, those first appointments are about an hour. And as I've mentioned a few times, we will need some documentation of your disability to give you accommodations. So that can include a 504 or an IEP. If you've had testing done, that works great too. We do have some documentation guidelines on our website where if you're on the DSS page over on the side in the black kind of column, it says documentation guidelines. There's some blank pages there. When I say blank, they're not quite blank, but they're fillable pages where we ask some kind of directed educational questions about what is the impact of your disability on educational type functions, because that's what we're looking for. So there's some forms there for, psych diagnosis, chronic medical, that kind of thing. So you can look on there. We don't require that it come from that website, but that does kind of help us, again, target some of the educational aspects. But you are unlikely to get accommodations without some kind of documentation. So please make sure that you have something to provide us. If you don't have anything, we can talk about how to get tested. We don't provide the testing at MC the way they do at MCPS. So yeah, things do get a little bit different. You guys can see there, that's the dinosaur from the Discovery Center in downtown Silver Spring. Once the Discovery Center moved, they moved it up here to our Science Center at Rockville. So that's pretty exciting for us. I like that dinosaur. Okay, next, please. The DSS intake. I think Leanne is going to take it from here.
Thank you, Katie. All right, next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about the intake, and that's really where the kind of the meat and potatoes is when we first meet our students. What to expect, of course. What we want to do is kind of get to know you as a student and as a learner. We'll talk to you about your goals. Like, what are your goals in Montgomery? Or do you want to have a degree and then move on to a four-year university? What do you want to do? What is your major? What are you interested in? And then how does your disability impact your educational experience? Thinking back on like high school classes and some other things, how did what was going on in the classroom impact your ability to learn? And that's really where we will talk about the different types of accommodations that could be reasonable at the college level. And again, it is different at the college level. So we really will hit that hard. Next slide, please. Okay, so the initial intake, it's by the end of the process, and I always say this too in my meetings with students is, by the end of the process, you will know exactly what accommodations you're eligible for based on the documentation and our conversation. The biggest thing too that I think a big learning curve is how to use your accommodations. Once again, in college, you are the adult and you're the person who's going to talk to the professor to say, hey, here's my accommodation. How does that look in your classroom? All the professors have office hours and they're very happy to talk to students about what it looks like in their classroom. We'll talk about your goals in education. What exactly do you want to do? We'll also go into how do you contact your DSS counselor if you need them. So if you're worried you're not getting your accommodations in a classroom, that's when we are there for you. So how do you contact us in those types of situations? We'll talk a lot about that. And we'll talk about different support systems that are available at Montgomery College. And again, we will talk a lot about the difference between high school and college. And I will tell you, it's a very fun thing for me to do, coming back from K-12 and talking to these students who are just out of high school, what it looks like, because it is different. But in my mind, and for most students that I talk to later, it's exciting for them because they do get to choose. They get to choose when their classes are, who their classes are, what time of the day, what campus they're in. So to me, it's an exciting time for them because students are becoming much more independent, and that's really what we want. Next slide, please. Again, as Katie said, you students will not use their IEP or 504. What you will use as students is your accommodation letter. The first thing we say to students is that you are responsible for sending your accommodation letter to your professors and then scheduling an appointment with them to say, hey, here's my accommodation letter. What does it look like in your class? So to have that happen, you have to meet with your counselor and discuss the accommodations and goals. And then each semester, when you're in high school, your IEP or 504 is a yearly thing. You go to the meeting once, you talk a little bit, all the adults are talking around you, that kind of thing. But in college, it's up to you again, but it's also up to you to request accommodations each semester. So you don't have to meet with the counselor every semester unless you want to, because we're always here for you. But you have to request, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. It's a very easy process. But again, you share your accommodation letter with your instructor, and then you talk about it with them. The other big thing, I think the big change for students, if they have extended time on testing quizzes, they have to arrange their testing situation. And we all have assessment centers in every single campus, and we could talk much more about that and what that looks like at Montgomery College when you ask for your testing situation. Excuse me. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so courses and services. We have several different ways that students can access their learning. Most of the time, students are face-to-face. They're on campus with the professor and in a classroom. However, we do have remote classes that meet virtually, but they're synchronous. So there are scheduled times that students must be in front of their camera, participating in a classroom or in the class. So the other part of that is distance learning, and distance learning classes are asynchronous. And if you're an independent learner and you're on it and you know exactly what to do and you have good executive functioning, asynchronous may work for you. And we have whole programs that are asynchronous, that are distance learning classes. Again, we'll support you either way, and your accommodations are good either way. But there's a lot of varieties of where you can take classes. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that students are choosing their classes, choosing what time they want to take their classes, and choosing where they want to take their classes. So it's important for you when you're registering that you look at what campus you're looking at. Because I've had students come back to me and say, oh my goodness, I scheduled a class at Rockville and then I scheduled a class at Tacoma, and I didn't realize that there are two different campuses. And, you just really have to pay attention to that when you're registering. Next slide, please. Don't forget, you apply to Montgomery College first, and then you apply to DSS. And that is our presentation.
So it seems like
Next slide.
we did go pretty quickly there.
I know we did.
Yeah, I guess we were rolling. If there are some specific questions that we can take and answer them out loud, if they're kind of applicable to the whole crowd, we can do that.
I think that all